Okay, so the blank that broke me is one of those YouTube naming conventions that the AI suggests whenever coming up with video names. It's the 2020s equivalent to BuzzFeed's old, "Number 7 will shock you" listicles from a bygone era. But in some cases, it's actually true. It might be less accurate to say that this film broke me than this is my horror origin story. Sure, I'd seen the 4 Friday the 13ths and a handful of Stephen King adaptations, but those always felt like action movies to me. Less The Conjuring and more Fast and Furious. No, this was more serious, grittier, more realistic. And somehow, it seemed custom designed to hit every panic trigger I had at the time. This was HBO's Fortress. And it connected with me in ways that no other horror movie had, and very few have since. It was the type of movie that implied that I, a 9-year-old child, was not safe from the violence of the world. And I was certain it would happen to me. But first, this video contains spoilers, so go watch the movie first and then come back and join us. Fortress is an adaptation of Gabrielle Lord's novel of the same name that was loosely based on the real-life Faraday school kidnapping case in Victoria, Australia. Lord's version of events molds the case into more of an action-adventure survival story, and that's the tone this film eventually takes. Sally Jones, played by Rachel Ward in a breakout lead role, is the lone teacher for a handful of kids in the Australian outback. It's the type of community where the school is so small that everyone learns at the same time, regardless of their age. It's also the type of community where the eldest boy occasionally has to get up before dawn to shoot a fox before it gets to the henhouse. This is a film where world building is paramount to the film's success, and it does an excellent job of establishing just the right feel as Sally and the 2 sons of the family she's living with make the long trek to the schoolhouse. This is Ozploitation at its finest, and while it's on another side of the world, it's not all that different from the community where I grew up. The film wastes little time getting underway, as no sooner than the school day starts as Sally looks out the window and finds that they are besieged by masked gunmen.
Thank you. That's better.
And unlike the laconic, lumbering masked men I was used to in horror, these guys were angry, abusive, and, most frighteningly, human.
Get them into the van. All of them.
The school I went to at the time I saw this had an ex-nun as a principal and a former Marine as superintendent, which meant yelling from an adult was almost immediately followed by some form of physical punishment. As a result, angry yelling always triggered my fight or flight. So there's one trigger down. Sally tries to keep the kids in line while remaining calmly defiant. It's a great piece of acting by Rachel Ward, who at this point had mostly done British TV and low-budget genre work. This leads to her coming up with a plan for one of the kids to sneak off during a bathroom break.
No! Hide nearby. When we've gone, go for your life.
The plan gets blown up by one of the little ones, but it was a nice effort. Only a handful of the kids get much in the way of personality differentiation, but there's Sid, played by Sean Garlick, who is the most mature and level-headed of the kids. Tommy is his doting brother. Narelle, played by future Mrs. Simon Baker Rebecca Rigg, Narelle is the oldest girl who is just hitting puberty. Derek, who is the awkward, chubby kid who has trouble relating to people. And Toby, the youngest and whiniest of the group. The kidnappers never get real names, but we have Mac the Mouse, Dabby Duck, Pussycat, and their unhinged leader, Father Christmas. Father Christmas always scared me the most as a kid because his mask allows us to see his eyes and the near constant seething rage behind them. The kids are herded into a cave, which seems fine enough, until the kidnappers roll a large boulder the size of a small boulder over the entrance, plunging the cave into darkness. Well, fortunately Derek has taken up smoking recently, so he has a box of matches in his pocket. And here I thought the smooth taste of Winfields was reward enough. The kids are able to gather enough paper to start a campfire, which you'd think wouldn't be a good idea in an enclosed cave, but Sid also notices the smoke wafting down a natural corridor. Sally takes Sid with her to explore the cave, where they find an underground river. Sally swims underneath the cave wall to the other side to check it out. Indeed, there is a way out. And now all that is needed is to swim the other kids under the rock to the other side. There is a moment where Sally starts to strip down so that her clothes won't get wet, and Sid doesn't know how to deal with this. He does eventually turn away because Sid is a gentleman, but there is a look on his face that tells us that Sally's brazenness around him has him concerned. I mean, clearly shit is getting real if modesty is going out the window. This leads to a harrowing sequence in which Sally takes the kids across the river one by one. Toby winds up doing pretty well for a little feller, but Sue panics when they get underwater and strangles Sally in her desperation. Fortunately, Sid is there and he pulls Sue to safety, but Sally gets stuck in the middle with no oxygen and only a fraction of an inch to breathe against the rocks. This is one of the most excruciating and claustrophobic scenes I've ever experienced, somehow combining the worst aspects of claustrophobia and thalassophobia. To this day, I still find myself holding my breath along with Rachel Ward. Sid returns and saves Sally as well, pulling her to the bank.
Wait, I've got it. You don't got to do nothing. I can do it and you can't. Tommy and me are great swimmers and we're used to the cold.
This is an interesting scene to watch in 2024 because it does come off as even a young boy being able to do something better than an adult female. But that, to me, was always the draw of the film. Sally is the only adult in charge of a group of kids who seem to be anywhere from 5 to 13. She doesn't have the luxury of panicking or admitting she doesn't know how to do something.
We're going on a picnic.
Are we, miss?
I think we are, Toby.
The kids are counting on her to keep her cool. Also, it doesn't get mentioned in the movie, but in the book it's clear that Sally is a city girl who is teaching in the rural area to work her way up. Plus, according to the book, there's a good chance that she's pregnant. The bottom line is, it's not up to Sally to do it herself. Her job is to empower the kids to become good citizens, which means self-reliance.
Can't you swim? I'll help you.
Regardless, the kids all do make it across, and even her sandwiches are intact. And Sally makes her second big mistake, misjudging how far it is to the small grouping of barns she spots across the hill. She thinks it will only be a mile or two trek, but they wind up getting there well after dark, and by that time the kids are whiny, tired, and hungry. Unfortunately, Sally makes a third mistake, although you can hardly blame her for this one. She knocks on the door and asks the little old lady for help, but out from behind the little old lady steps Father Christmas. Sally's led the kids right back into the lion's den. This was actually the moment that broke me as a kid because I was sure, certain even, that the kids would spend the rest of the film narrowly avoiding the kidnappers until the very end, where the kidnappers would get some sort of comeuppance.
Diplomatic immunity. It's just been revoked.
Nope. Now, matters are worse.
Where do you think you're going, Toby? Eh?
The kidnappers force the old farm couple to feed them while the starving children watch, which is actually one of the more dickish things they've done. I mean, kidnapping is what kidnappers do, but there's no reason to chow down in front of starving kids. The old man pipes up and gets blown away by one of the panicked kidnappers, so you know that they're A, willing to get violent, and B, total amateurs at this. That second one is the chilling part. The kidnappers wrangle the kids into a nearby barn, but not before Father Christmas implies that he's going to violate both Sally and Norelle before this is all over. From the barn, we hear the old woman meeting a similar fate to her husband. We also hear an argument among the kidnappers. Apparently, the plan was supposed to be that they'd kill a kid an hour until their demands were met. So it's a good thing the kids found a way out of the cave. The kidnappers argue over the idea of killing kids, and it sounds like one of them is really not on board with that. Unfortunately, that guy also gets blown away. And given that this is all experienced through the eyes and ears of the children in the barn, there's no telling which one got. But smart money is not on the more sadistic Father Christmas.
Go on, run. 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 Run.
All of this is finally too much for Sally, who breaks down crying because there's no way of knowing their next move. She only knows that it's escalated to murder now, and there's no reason to leave witnesses. And she also knows that everything that she's tried has backfired. When two of the kidnappers drive off, leaving a third to guard the barn, Sid hatches a plan to catch a rabbit, in his words. But all this really means is that they sucker the pussycat kidnapper into the barn, have Norelle distract him by flirting, and then whack him over the head. It's not exactly a David Mamet level con here. Unfortunately, an errant shot takes out Tommy's shoulder in the fracas, so now they have to figure a way to get him to safety while avoiding the two kidnappers that are still out there. I appreciate the tightness of the script here, as it's not merely a series of events, but rather a series of consequences. A good thriller will have smart or resourceful characters figure a way out of their situation, but the cost of that is often a different and sometimes worse problem that they couldn't possibly have anticipated. Kids locked in a cave, find a way out of the cave. Found a way out, far away from civilization. Hike to the houses, bad guys are at the house. Stuck in a barn, brain one of the kidnappers. Kidnapper is out, Tommy gets shot. For each problem, there's a solution, and for each solution, it leads directly back to a new problem. The group hightails it through the woods before the kidnappers come back, and that's when they confirm that it was Dabby Duck who got fragged in a gruesome fake-out. Eventually, they make their way to another cave where they hole up for the night. When Sally wakes up from guard duty the next morning, she finds the Father Christmas mask on a tree, and somewhere out in the bush is a cackling Mac the Mouse, who flat out tells them that they're coming back after dark to rape Narelle.
Father Christmas will be back then! He fancies the young one with a big tit!
Broken, Sally has a brief moment of wrongheadedness, thinking that they should just let the kidnappers come and take them away, instead of resisting. But Derek, of all people, goes on a tirade about killing them if he had a chance. And that inspires Sally to rally the troops and finally turn the tables.
We've got to fight them! We outnumbered them 4-1!
This leads to the most adorable war montage ever, as the kids prepare to go to battle with whittled spears, rocks, torches, makeshift Molotov cocktails, and whatever else they can get their hands on.
Taking a chance, risking it all.
But Narelle is still spooked by the threat, so she dips out on the crew to make a run for it before dark. Sure, in retrospect that is stupid and it ruins the battle plan idea, but I get it. I'm not sure I would put my life and the safety of my vagina in Toby and Derek's hands either, no matter how well-intentioned or motivated they were. Instead though, Sally is drawn out to try to track Narelle down before Mac the Mouse does, and it's a tense sequence. Narelle makes a break for it back to the cave as Mac turns his sights on Sally. Little does he know, though, it's a sucker job, and the kids unleash an avalanche of rocks onto him, and Sally pushes him onto a pointy stick moat to finally finish him off. That just leaves Father Christmas, and a showdown you'd think would be more epic, but it's actually really anticlimactic. He trips over a wire and falls into the campfire as the kids emerge from their hiding spots, having gone absolutely feral, and begin to dismember him in a moment that is equally disturbing and cathartic. Viewers will no doubt find parallels to Lord of the Flies, the William Golding novel about stranded children forming a small society to survive, although it's miles away in terms of theme. In that story, there's a measured disappointment in civilized young Brits not being able to get along. Whereas here the theme seems to be, I wish a motherfucker would. In reality, it has more in common with The Road or Watership Down, with the children learning that they must be resourceful because the world is a cruel place, and adults don't always have the right answers. It's a lesson that is rather distinct from the American monomyth, where some singular hero rises to the occasion. Instead, the victims have to be self-reliant to survive, and each child gets their moment to be brave and offer a valuable idea.
And do you think we could catch a rabbit?
It's this unsavory step over the line into bloodthirsty violence that the film uses to wink at the audience in the final scene, as the investigators arrive to question Sally and the kids, and note that Father Christmas appears to have wounds that couldn't have been caused by any animal. The kids really did have their way with him. Sally, though, protects the kids and their reputations by giving the cops the world's best, "Am I being detained? No? Then fuck off."
You move very quietly, Sid.
Fortress may not work on me the same way it did when I was 9, but I can now appreciate the craftsmanship at play from Arch Nicholson, and the most comforting message I ever received as a kid. You don't fuck with K through 6. Stay warm, stay safe, wash your hands, return your shopping carts, make good choices, and I'll see you next time.